Carol, the AP found most Americans are planning to watch some, if not all, of this debate. How much does this level of interest matter at this stage of the campaign?
You know, Stephanie, it's really interesting that so many people want to tune in to a debate that is happening so early in the cycle, earlier than a presidential debate has happened in recent times. And it's almost, according to some of the interviews with some of these folks, it's almost as if they're looking to see a train wreck, almost like who's going to make the gaffe first, or who's going to attack the other in a more crass and coarse way. There's a lot of interest in this as performative art. You know, will Biden be able to fend off the sort of alpha male behavior at times of Donald Trump as he exhibited with his debate with Hillary Clinton? And will Donald Trump say something so outlandish that people sort of have their jaw dropped? That's a big question for a lot of American viewers tonight. Some of them, it's a bigger question for them than who they're going to vote for because they've already decided.
George, let's talk about these so-called double haters. I mean, I really like that you brought Miami Vice to the Colorado.
Well, I was trying to go with the Blues.
Well, I'm just saying I like it. There's no haters here. Let's talk about the double haters. All these people who are saying, I don't like the current president, I don't like the former president. Could tomorrow night sway them?
Yeah, absolutely, because I think you're going to see a contrast between these two individuals. They're quite different personalities. I mean, you have Donald Trump, who is, I'm going to say it for the 1 millionth time, a narcissistic psychopath who can't control himself and who's easily provoked by even the slightest criticism. And I think what Joe Biden has to do is provoke him. And it doesn't take much to provoke him. All you have to do is say, well, my opponent, the criminal convict, all you have to do is say that. And when he starts to lose it and talk about the election that he did lose, and that'll get him started talking about the election, he's very easy to trigger, and almost predictably so. And what I hope that the Biden campaign has done is prepared President Biden, to figure out ways to just sort of get under Trump's skin, because it's not that hard. And then for his part, Joe Biden has to just behave like a normal human being, the normal human being that he is, and just smile whenever Trump says something crazy, and just say, lean over to him and say, you need to talk to your lawyers by any chance? Something like that.
Okay, that would be your strategic advice. Last night, I spoke to Maryland Governor Wes Moore, Eddie, and he had different advice for the current president that doesn't involve antagonizing or provoking or even thinking about Donald Trump. Watch this.
I think the president just needs to focus on his vision for the future. I think to ask him to counter every one of Donald Trump's lies is going to be unfair, and it's going to be ridiculous. I actually think that there's other people and other things that can be done to counter every single lie that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth, which will be plentiful. I think the president just needs to spend his time focusing on the vision for the next 4 years.
I agree with Wes, actually, in the sense that our tendency is to want to see the performative, as Carol said, to pay attention to the battle between the two, to see if he can rile, Donald Trump, or if the Irish Joe will show up. But the seriousness of the moment, it's incumbent upon us as people who are covering the debate to not get caught up in the one-liners, to get caught up in the performance, to get caught up in the theatrics of it all, because our democracy is at stake. And it's up to President Biden to elevate the seriousness. And of course, when Donald Trump tries to bring him into the pigsty, right?
Or Eddie, what about the excitement? What about the opportunity to inspire America?
I absolutely he should be trying to inspire America, and he should talk about his vision for the future. But the fact of the matter is, the central issue in this campaign is that one candidate is off his rocker. And that has to be brought home to the American people. People have forgotten that because, he's busy off at his trial, falling asleep in courtrooms. People have to remember how nuts Donald Trump is, and it has to be brought home to them
But a lot of
television.
people aren't thinking about Donald Trump or Joe Biden. They think the government doesn't work for them. And what they'd like to hear is someone speak to them about what that candidate will do for them and the future that they can have in this country and get inspired.
And one candidate will basically destroy the government and the Constitution and the rule of law.
That has to be made clear.
Yes.
What I think, though, what we have to do, and I think what President Biden has to do, is to understand that he's the adult in the room.
Yes.
Right? And he has to perform that. He has to make that clear. And that involves not just simply contrasting himself to Donald Trump as I'm the adult, that's the rotten, spoiled child, but also I have a substantive vision for the country that's more than just simply it's not Donald Trump.
Well, I agree with that.
But I think it's important to, as commentators, as pundits, that we don't fall for the trap. And that is to read this as the traditional debate where we're looking for the one-liners, we're paying attention to the performance. Our democracy is at stake. We have to be as serious.
To Carol. Carol, with the wars in Gaza and Ukraine, do not forget Ukraine. How tricky is foreign policy for President Biden to navigate on stage tomorrow, but also for Donald Trump, who I'm going to say is a friendly ally to Vladimir Putin? Remember that, America.
And remember, America, I mean, Donald Trump has been a friendly ally to every autocrat that walked into the Oval Office. Welcomed Recep Erdogan, welcomed Fattah el-Sisi, welcomed people that were engaged in human rights abuses against their people, engaged in and linked to massacres of their opponents, people who were reelected in sham elections, and Donald Trump congratulated them on being elected in a way that basically the other opponents were removed from the possibility of winning. So, and I'm speaking of Putin in that case. I think it is tricky, Steph. I'm glad you raise it, because Donald Trump could say in his arsenal, hey, we're at war, 2 wars during this presidency. I didn't get us into that situation. But Biden's response can easily be, I remember when the diplomatic community was petrified that you were in charge, because they were fearful at all moments that you would pull us out of the alliances that kept our country safe. And of course, that's NATO. Multiple generals, secretaries of state, national security advisors, chief of staff at the White House were losing their minds when Donald Trump threatened to do that, because it has kept our country safe in ways that are highly classified and in ways that are highly obvious.
How do you get people to remember that, Eddie? We know that foreign policy, especially the situation in Gaza, is so tricky for President Biden, but it's as though Donald Trump gets off scot-free. No one's even thinking about him when it comes to foreign policy. Yet, think about all of those autocrats that Donald Trump charms and the situation we could be in. The only person who wants Donald Trump to win as much as Trump does is Putin.
Right. And as a writer, one of the most powerful tools you could use is serial lists, those 3. And what I think President Biden should do in that moment when Donald Trump tries to position himself as the strong man who would have prevented the wars, is just call the roll. All the generals, all the secretaries, all the foreign policy, everything, just call the roll one after the other and let Donald Trump face the fact that all of these people, many of whom were in his administration, right, have said this man shouldn't be anywhere near the White House. Just call the roll.
Totally right.
One after the other.
Like John Bolton, I was on a panel with him, interviewing him actually a few weeks ago. And he basically said that foreign leaders think of Donald Trump as a laughing fool.
Okay, but you know what John Bolton, and I didn't watch the panel, but you know what John Bolton didn't say during that panel? Though he called, I'm going to guess, though he said Donald Trump is the world's most dangerous person, blah, blah. He didn't say that he's voting for Joe Biden. So let's just move that in the back row.
All right.
Let's talk about what Joe Biden did do this week. He's had several policy successes in just the last few days. Inflation Reduction Act has reduced the prices on 64 more drugs. The number of uninsured people in this country is now at a record low, and there has been a 40% drop in illegal crossings at the southern border since the president's executive action. That's just this week. From a policy perspective, Donald Trump, we've heard almost nothing. In fact, the only things he's told us about what he would do to address inflation, we now have 17 former Nobel Prize winners saying his policies would be like a bomb to our economy. When will we see this hit center stage? Tomorrow night, actual policies, and will the American people start to hear it?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think there's going to be room for discussion of these actual policies, but I think the biggest thing from the economic standpoint is what, to my mind, is the effect of another Trump administration on the rule of law and the stability of the American government. And that, to me, is the biggest danger that, Donald Trump presents lots of dangers to the American economy, but that biggest danger is the threat of financial capital flight and human capital flight because of the disorder that he will create by basically doing what he wants to do in contrary to the law. I mean, this is the man who tried to launch an insurrection. This is the man who is basically going to decide this time around he's not going to pay attention to the people who are telling him that, well, you can't legally do this, you can't legally do that.
And I think it's really important if President Biden goes down this route to tout what he has done, what he's achieved, he has to do it really quickly. He has to do it really quickly and then contrast it to what Trump did and what Trump portends or suggests. Because if he tries to get too into the weeds around policy, right, he's going to get run over.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.